Hey everybody, this is Tom with Rocket Restorations, and today we're going to do a Mecum wrap-up. I did one of these last year, and it was honestly one of the most popular videos I've ever done, so just wanted to kind of tell you what happened at 2025 Mecum Kissimmee, go over some of the cars, go over some of the trends I saw. We're also going to do a video on Barrett Jackson next weekend, so that's happening this weekend. I want to wait till everything's done and the dust is settled. There's actually some really cool stuff at Barrett Jackson, including a video we did yesterday with a car that had the VIN cut off of it. If you're familiar with the channel, appreciate you subscribe, but you should watch yesterday's video too. There was something very interesting in Barrett, but we'll do Barrett next weekend. And then I always like to do about once a year, do a kind of a state of the market video, where, kind of see where stuff is right now. Price going up, price going down. But as I said, I like to do it after Barrett Jackson, so I kind of see where the dust is settled and everything. So, but today we're going to cover Mecum Kissimmee 2025. Again, the biggest auction in the world. I mean, it's incredible. They started out as, kind of second fiddle to Barrett Jackson, and they've, in some ways are ahead of Barrett Jackson now. They had, the numbers are staggering. So the 2025 Mecum Kissimmee auction, they had total sales of $224 million. That's insane. That's almost $250,000. Now keep in mind, that is down from last year. It's down about 4%. And they had a bunch of really high profile cars not sell that would have really helped those numbers. So the auction was from January 7th to 19th, which is a hugely long auction. But when they had 4,400 cars at the sale. That is an insane number of cars. That's how long it takes to do that. And the sell-through rate was 74%, which I believe was a little bit down from last year too. I couldn't find that number, what 2024's was, but I know that's down a little bit too. I know the overall number was down 4%. The sell-through's a little bit down too. But so many cars. I've never actually been to Mecum Kissimmee. I'm hoping to maybe try to go next year. My brother went last year, and it's like a car show with 4,400 cars in it, and there's all these cool cars. There's some really high-end stuff there this year that was, pretty cool to see go through. It's 10 days, and one thing I definitely noticed is, we record the whole auction to watch it, and boys, the early cars, there was a lot of bid goes on, and there wasn't very good money for most of that stuff. And unless you're a dealer, I can't see how anyone could just sit in an auction for 10 days buying cars. It has to, like Barrett Jackson, is Tuesday through Sunday. So like you go Thursday through Sunday, that's not that bad to go look at a car. But when you have 10 days, that's crazy. Like that's a long time to be in one place at an auction. During the COVID fueled craziness, everything was selling. This year there was some early cars that went, some of them didn't meet reserve, and I'll be honest, I don't really like covering Mecum calls it bid goes on, which means it didn't sell basically. How reserve didn't sell, and they go to their like back lot or something where they have cars where they try to sell them back there. But there was a lot of that stuff early on. There's a couple cars I'm going to highlight too that went through that didn't sell, but normally I don't do that because it doesn't mean much. Like especially in these big auction houses, there's what's called chandelier bidding, where a lot of times, Mecum owns a lot of these cars too. I'm going to feature one more that they own that didn't sell, just because I have some history with it. But that's real commonplace in these places too. The bids are going up, but there's no actual bidders in the room. And that's actually a legal thing to do. But when I see a bid goes on car, I have a hard time taking that price very seriously. So I did pick a few of those out just because they were kind of extreme cases. But generally I ignore those cars because it's really hard it's pretty much impossible to take any sales data from that basically. I just want to give a shout out to John Craman too. He was one of the announcers for Mecum Auctions. He'd been with them like 17 years, 20 years or something. He went in as consignment director, but he was the kind of the color guy. If you watch sports or baseball, he was kind of the guy who, his nickname was the professor. He always knew a lot about these cars. Unfortunately, I never got to meet the man. I ran into him a couple times in McCacken, but I never actually got to meet the man. But from everyone I've ever talked to said he was just a great guy. It was a real shame. He passed away. It was the second or third day of the auction, and I thought it was weird that he wasn't doing the announcing. And then when I heard that, it kind of made sense. Shout out to John Craman. Everybody says that he was a great dude, and he'll be missed on the broadcast. He did a really good job. One thing I've definitely noticed the last couple of years is Mecum tends to be tends to have more of the stock cars, and they've definitely gotten, at least in terms of Mopars. I mean, keep in mind, I'm a Mopar guy. That's what my channel is. That's what we're concentrating on here. We'll throw out a couple more names and some stuff I saw here, but yeah, I'm worried about them. I'm worried about the Mopars. But Mecum has reserves and Barrett-Jackson doesn't, and it scares a lot of people. And I understand it, especially in a market that there's a lot of uncertainty right now. It's really hard to take a very expensive car and take it to Barrett-Jackson and take the risk of losing your pants off of it. You know, when you have a reserve at Mecum, it gives you some safety. I mean, you still have to bring it back and forth, but because of that, Mecum's been getting better quality Mopars, in my opinion. Barrett-Jackson has kind of been riding the resto mod wave. There was a lot of resto mods there. I couldn't believe it. I mean, like, there's some Blazers getting like $150,000, $200,000 at Barrett-Jackson, and I mean, the stock ones are getting $130,000, which is insane to me. Like, those aren't very good cars. I don't understand how Blazers and Broncos are getting that much money, but whatever. By the way, I like Ram Chargers. I have a couple of them right now in a Trail Duster. I think those are bound to go up pretty soon here because they're going to catch up to that. But Barrett's kind of been going all in on resto mods lately, and they seem to be doing really well. They sell really well there, and that's kind of their crowd too. There's the you know, kind of the bro crowd more at Barrett-Jackson than Mecum. You know, the guys who like to go down, party, and, you know, have a few drinks and buy a vehicle. The question on resto mods is it a fad or is it a trend? And, you know, my biggest problem with the resto mod stuff is it relies on modern electronics from aftermarket companies. And who's going to support that stuff in 10 years? You know, if Holley stops making, if you put a Holley Sniper on your, you know, Dodge Ram Charger, Chevy Blazer, and that computer fails in 10 years, who are you going to replace it with? How are you going to fix that down the line? That's why I think it's more of a fad than a trend. That's just my personal opinion. A couple other kind of one-offs I saw. There was the Steve McQueen 917 Porsche. That thing was awesome. You know, it was in the movie Le Mans. Jerry Steinfeld owned it. It bid up to, I think it was 25 with a no sale, which I thought was kind of interesting. You know, but it's so tough to say on that. You know, he might have had a $50 million reserve. We don't know that. I don't know how close it was. There's a lot of times where, you know, the auction houses will make a lot of promises to these guys. Like, you know, like, everybody's supposed to pay a 10% commission fee. Like, I pretty much guarantee you Jerry Seinfeld was not going to pay 10% to bring that car there, because that was the capstone car for the auction to bring people in the door. It was the halo car to bring people in. But unfortunately it didn't sell. I mean, they tried really hard. I said I watched it live, and they really tried to pound that thing, but it didn't sell. And I know last year on this video, I basically kind of did commentary while watching the TV, and unfortunately, the TV didn't like that. So, and honestly, I'm stealing their content by putting it on there, so I'm not going to do that this year. So I'm going to show you pictures, give you some commentary on some stuff, but unfortunately, I can't do live video of the feed, just because I'm not there, and it's illegal to steal content, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to get in trouble. Another thing I saw was, man, there were so many modern Mopars there, and the thing is, like, they made so many Hellcats and Last Calls and all this, and it's like, that stuff, I mean, it's cool, I appreciate it. It's not what I'm into, so I'm not going to cover that at all here, basically. I mean, there was one time where there was like 20 of the Last Calls go through at once, and it's like, I don't know, there's a famous line from Two Lane Blacktop. I don't know if some of you have seen that movie. It's a classic movie from the late 60s, early 70s, one of my favorite car movies, but part of the movie, they have a 55 Chevy Gasser, and they're racing against a brand new GTO, and the guys in the Chevy tell the guy in the GTO, you know, we built our car, you bought yours. Another one I just wanted to show you real quick was a Mustang Cobra R. I know it's a Ford, but it just kind of shows you where the marketplace is going with the 80s and 90s cars. A lot of millennials, you know, they have money now, and that's the cars they grew up with in magazines and stuff, and they're really popular, especially for super low mile ones. I mean, this one got $181,000, which is insane for a Fox body Mustang, but you know, that's kind of where the market goes. Unfortunately, Chrysler doesn't really have anything to compete with that. You know, they had the Shelby Chargers and Omnis and all that stuff, the GLHS, the Shelby Dakota, you know, the Spirit RT, but they just, I don't know, just the reputation of those cars. There's less Mopar people out there. Mopar people have kind of, you know, they're not rear wheel drive V8. People have kind of written off those cars as, you know, it's not something that they're ever interested in, so they haven't seen it, but it's definitely a trend. You know, cars are getting a lot more those cars are getting a lot more value from that era right now. So just thought it was an interesting sale. I saw that price. I was like, wow. Okay, a couple cars I want to highlight here. I'm going to try to do this in, some of these, I'm going to start out with some of the earlier auction cars. And again, it was, there's reasons for this stuff that the stuff didn't go very well. And I know I wasn't going to show a lot of, I literally said this in the start of the auction that I wasn't going to show a lot of bid goes on cars, but there's a couple specific cars I thought were really interesting, didn't sell, so I want to highlight them. First car here is a 1966 Hemi Corvette. It was nicknamed the White Elephant. They did a bunch of, they put a lot of video on this car. Chris Jacobs did a preview of it before it went across the block. It was on the block for a while. They really tried to hawk this thing, but only got $29,000, which is crazy. And again, I don't have any inside information on this car. It didn't have hubcaps on it. It had a WO hood scoop on it, which is 67, not 66, but it was definitely an interesting car. And that just seems way too cheap for a Hemi car. A real Hemi car, but obviously didn't sell, didn't hit reserve. That was really cheap. I thought that was kind of interesting. We always try to throw kind of a wild card in here too. There was a 1949 Chrysler Town & Country convertible. I think these are really cool cars. The post-war era from 46 to 54 has almost zero interest for me. And unfortunately, most other people think that way too. They made a ton of cars in those era. They're not that exciting. Chrysler was by far the most boring of the big three on those years. There was, all they worried about is whether you get your big hat on there with a big roof on there. So those cars don't bring much money, but there's some exceptions. And, and a lot of people say with the market, like, oh, all these guys are dying off and these cars are going to be worthless in a few years. There's always cars that are going to be worth money. Like, a wing car, for example. Those will always be worth money. No matter what happens, those will always be worth money because they're desirable, they're weird, they're unique, and there aren't a lot of them out there. So this 49 Town & Country convertible, it looked like a really nice car. I mean, dude, it went forever. Like, they ran this car. It had a $75,000 reserve, and it sold for $157,500. And keep in mind, that's the price from TV. It, with the juice, it was actually more money than that, which is crazy for a 49 Chrysler. But it looked like a beautiful car. I love the woodwork on these. They're just really cool cars. I really like the way it looked. It was a crazy result. So just thought I'd like to share that with you. Obviously we're just covering mostly Mopars here. I didn't see any Ram Chargers on the broadcast, which kind of surprised me. I know Mecum I know Barrett had a couple, I believe. There was a Trail Duster. This is another bid goes on truck, and I don't know, this thing looked pretty. It was bright, but it didn't have the pop top. And I don't know if it was supposed to or not. It had, what everybody's doing now, the big jack up lift on it, the big wheels and tires, blah, blah, blah. That's what everybody wants right now. Everybody's building bro dozers and everything. I'm not a huge fan of that. A little bit more is nice, but when they're all jacked up like that, they have no use to me. You're just looking cool. There's no utility of them. But it bid up to $70,000 and didn't sell. So I don't know what that was all about. I can't imagine that there was $70,000 in the room for that truck, but what do I know? If somebody lost out on a Blazer for $130,000, maybe they thought 70 for a Trail Duster was a good deal. Who knows? Here's a 1971 Plymouth Barracuda. And this is kind of an example of what not to do in an auction. Obviously I have the picture here. This is the picture from Mecum. But when it went through, like, the top was up, the glass was up, it wasn't cleaned, it was presented terribly. Apparently it's owned by an NHL hockey guy, Teemu Selane, which I'm probably butchering his name. I'm sure he plays hockey, he wasn't there. But you got to have a representative there to show the car. So it's just, I don't know, it was bid goes on, it didn't get any money on that, and it was really dumb. Like, if you're gonna bring a car, present it properly. If you're not gonna present it properly, why bother? All right, a couple other cars here. Here's a Superbird. This was a white Superbird. It was a 440 car. What's special about this one is it was owned by Richard Petty, which I understand adds value. I am not a celebrity car guy. It does nothing for me. There's a famous quote by Jay Leno that if you buy a celebrity car, it's their car, never your car. And I totally agree with that. I just don't get it. It was a 440 Superbird. That's a couple $100,000 car. It bid up to $550,000, and I'm sure they wanted at least 7 figures for that thing. And it's signed by Petty. He put by Petty underneath the Plymouth on the quarter panel, all that usual stuff. And I don't know. That does nothing for me. It doesn't interest me in any way, shape, or form. And I realize I'm doing more bid goes on cars than any other cars right now. So I apologize, but I just thought a lot of these cars had interesting stories and I wanted to add some stuff on it. Okay, so here's the next car is a Plymouth AAR Cuda, 1970, factory black, which looks sinister on those cars. I love black Trans Am cars, especially on a Cuda, because they have, they have the fiberglass hood, they have the organasalt paint on the hood, down the fenders, down the doors. They just look really, really cool in black. And it got $220,000, which is funny because it sold for the exact same amount last year. So Mecum really likes the car, has done very well on that car, but really high quality car. It just shows you that, numbers matching, documentation on a Trans Am car can get you a huge premium. We helped to sell a car, an AAR Cuda here at the shop last year, and it got around 6 figures. But it was, burnt orange, it wasn't black, it didn't have numbers matching motor, had a bunch of sheet metal replacement. So it's amazing. I mean, having numbers matching motor, having, original sheet metal, having all that on it, that basically doubles the value of that car. It just shows you that, people are willing to spend money on this stuff. They are, they're willing to spend money for good cars. Okay, a couple more cars here. And I realize a lot of you watching aren't in like the market for Hemi cars, but no matter what you think about this, I'm not in the market for a Hemi car either, but the top of the market sets the market for the bottom cars. Like if you want a 318 Barracuda, the price of if a Hemi Cuda sells for $500,000, that affects you because the price of the lower cars go up because the price of clones go up. And then when people are willing to spend that much money on cars, we've been real lucky the last few years with the revolution of reproduction parts. So a lot of companies have stepped up to make a lot of amazing parts to restore these cars. Without that stuff, we couldn't restore these cars anymore. There's no such thing as a parts e-body anymore. There's no such thing as a parts charger anymore, at least it's 68 to 71. And, when the price of these cars go up, it lets reproduction parts be made for them, which helps me as a restoration shop. And obviously I wish these cars were cheaper too, so I could afford some of them, but it's not the reality we live in. And it is what it is. We can't change it. We can't go back in time. That's not how it works. Okay. So this one was lot F181, a 1970 Hemi Cuda. What was interesting about this one, it was a 105 with a V1G Gator Green top, which I think they're hideous. I don't like the look of them at all. I don't know why this made this interesting, especially with the EV2. Like, that's just kind of a weird combo. I think they have a little green tinge to the tops too. They just look kind of weird. Not a big fan of it, but it was a 4-speed, was numbers matching, broadcast sheet, Chrysler Registry Visual Inspection, whatever that means. I'm pretty sure that's Galen, not Dave. Concours nut and bolt restoration, blah, blah, blah. Only test miles since restoration, which, by the way, if a car ever says only test miles since the restoration, that means there's a bunch of stuff wrong with it. Because trust me, as a guy who puts cars together, I mean, we had a 67 Cornet 500 convertible we finished last year, and it took us 2 weeks to sort all the problems out with it. And every single part we had to sort out was a brand new part that we put on. So no matter what, when you take a car apart that far, it's going to have issues no matter what you do. So that just means not everything's worked out. But sorry, I digress, rant over. But this thing got $522,000, which is a lot for a 70. 71s, am I getting that? 71s are a lot rarer. They made a lot less 71 Hemi Cudas than 70s, and they just always been more desirable. The 71 Hemi Cuda convertible is kind of the ultimate, so that's really good money for that car. I mean, I think it was a decent car from everything I could see, but that's really good money for that car. All right, last car here. Just want to give a shout out to my buddy Mike Mancini at American Muscle Car Restorations, and he does, I don't know how Mike finds time to do everything. He just bought performance car graphics. They do instrument specialties. Yeah, they put out amazing work in their shop. Really, really good, nice cars. They had a Duster last year that set a world record. And then this year they had a 1969 Hemi Road Runner go through there. And it set a new all-time record for a Hemi car. At least I believe. So I didn't, but $269,500 for a Hemi Road Runner is amazing. But anything that comes out of his shop absolutely gets a premium because he has top flight stuff. It's OE gold. I mean, like, all his cars win every award they've ever been entered into. He does absolutely amazing work. You do high-end restorations and your cars get more money than other guys who restore their cars, you're doing a pretty good job. All right, just to wrap everything up here, I think Mecum did pretty good this year. I said I'll have my thoughts on the market. I'm going to do a Barrett Jackson video next week, and I'll kind of give you my thoughts on the market, but I'll kind of give you a preview. I mean, like, everything kind of seems to be status quo. Like, things are going pretty good. Good cars are still getting good money. Mecum did $224 million. They're killing it right now. They're getting really good cars there. I mean, The auction seemed like it was a great success. You know, there were some real high-end cars I'm sure they wish they would have sold. You know, the 917 Porsche and some other stuff, but, you know, they're doing pretty good. So, all right, well, this is Tom from Rocket Restorations. Really appreciate everybody for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.